I parked at a haunted construction site at midnight. 5 unbelievable truckers' tales of terror. I never should have opened that door. It was supposed to be just another quiet night. A simple break from the road. The site loomed before me, an eerie silhouette against the moonlight. Shadows twisted among the crumbling concrete and rusted beams, whispering secrets of the dead. The air was icy. A chill crept up my spine, tinged with a metallic odor, like blood. My heart raced as I stepped out, the gravel crunching under my boots. Each sound echoed louder. A warning? I could almost feel the eyes watching me. I shook it off, but dread gnawed at me as I neared the unfinished building that it was dark. So dark. My phone's light flickered on, slicing through the heavy gloom. The beam bounced off the walls like a scared rabbit, revealing fleeting glimpses of old tools and dust-coated plans strewn about. For a brief moment, I was merely lost in this forgotten dream. But then, a low moan rolled through the my breath hitched. I turned. Nothing. Just the shadows playing tricks. Gritting my teeth, I pushed forward. The further I went, the more the silence seemed to thicken, pressing down on my chest. Suddenly, I heard it againa scraping sound, like wood against concrete. It sent cold sweat trickling down my back. What was that? My voice trembled, merging with the shadows. I paused, listened. The world was still, too still. And then, a soft laugh echoed high-pitched and twisted. Felt like ice skimming over my skin. I darted a glance behind me, but the path back seemed even darker. Something moved. A shadow, thick and unnatural, slithered into my line of sight. My heart thundered. I should have left. I should have never come here. My feet were glued to the ground, paralyzed by fear. The air vibrated with an ominous hum, a haunting melody looking for a soul in the dim light. I saw it. A figure, tall and indistinct, lurking just out of reach. My breath caught, each inhale a battle against the rising panic within me. It was watching. I could feel its gaze bore into me, hungry. I stumbled back, my pulse racing, but the world echoed with silence until a door slammed shut behind me. I spun around. And that was when I heard the whisper, so close I could almost touch it. Stay hey. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The whisper hung in the air like a heavy fog, thick with dread. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs felt anchored to the ground, caught in a web of terror. Stay it coiled around my mind, luring me deeper into the darkness. I glanced back towards the exit, but a suffocating sense of doom enveloped me, daring me to take that first step. The shadows danced, warping and twisting in unnatural ways. I fought against the feelings of vulnerability that clawed at me. The air grew colder, the metallic scent sharpening, as if death itself were nearby. I turned, forced myself to face the figure. It was watching me still, its presence almost palpable, like the prickling sensation before a thunderstorm. "Whoa, who are you?" I called into the darkness, though my voice cracked, betraying me. Silence answered, thick and oppressive. Spurred by sheer desperation, I took a step forward, and that was when the figure shifted. It elongated, stretching impossibly, its limbs bending in ways they shouldn't. My breath came in jagged gasps as my heart raced out of control. "Why are you here?" The question pierced through the stillness, not from my own lips, but echoing from the entity before me. The sound slithered around and wrapped itself around my thoughts. I was just taking a break. I stammered, feeling the air throb with something ancient and plotting. I took another step closer, driven by an insatiable curiosity intermingling with dread. The figure let out a laugh, raspy and suffocating, echoing through the hollow beams and broken walls as it laughed. I felt the ground beneath me tremble, the concrete vibrating with a low, sinister hum. It was as if the very site was alive, groaning and warning me to turn back. "You shouldn't have come here," it breathed, a chorus of voices merging into oni cacophony of despair. A sudden flash of movement caught my eye. Without warning, the shadows erupted, pouring from the corners of the site like smoke from a fire. I stumbled back, my breath hitching as I was engulfed in darkness. They coiled around my ankles, drawing me into their embrace, and I felt my pulse quicken in fear. "Let me go!" I screamed, but the shadows laughed, 1,000 voices mingling in mocking harmony. They twirled around me, dragging me towards the unfinished building where the whispers grew louder, consuming me. I could barely make out the faint outline of the entity, its features shifting and changing like the very walls around me. Just then, I caught sight of something metallic shimmering in the dark. A tool? A weapon? I didn't know, but I flailed, grasping for anything that could help me escape. My fingers closed around something cold and solid, a wrench maybe? But my escape felt increasingly futile as the shadows pulled me deeper into their fold. And then I heard Ida's low growl, reverberating from the depths of the building. The shadows froze for a moment, then began to retreat slightly, revealing a doorway I hadn't noticed before. A door that loomed with an ominous glow, creaking softly as if inviting me to step over the threshold. "Don't go in there," the figure whispered, its eyes now piercing orbs of judgment. "It's worse than you can imagine." But curiosity turned my fear into a frenzied impulse, and against every instinct, I found myself moving toward the door. As I reached for the handle, icy fingers nipped at my back, a firm grip pulling me away just as I twisted the knob. The door swung open with a groan, revealing an unimaginable darkness, a void that whispered promises of dread and sin. The shadows roiled around me, every instinct shouting for me to flee, but it was too late. I had already stepped into the abyss. And then, from within the folds of that eternal shadow, a clawed hand shot out, seizing my wrist with a grip like iron. "You'll never leave," it hissed, dragging me deeper into the darkness, where a chorus of tormented souls awaited. They were all screaming my name. The scream of my name echoed inside the vast, consuming darkness, drowned in the tumult of despair from countless unseen souls. The grip on my wrist was unyielding, firm yet cold, like being caught in the clenched fist of death itself. I was pulled deeper into the void, where reality twisted like a carnival mirror reflecting terror. For every step that I was drawn further from the world I knew, the cacophony grew louder, the voices merging into a terrifying symphony of anguish. "Help us," they pleaded, their cries pitched high and raw. I could see nothing but shadows, but I felt eyes, thousands of them boring into me, hungry and desperate, that I clawed against the ground, every instinct screaming at me to break free, but the darkness wrapped tighter around me. Panic surged within me as disembodied whispers called out from the hollow expanse, each one blending into the next, creating an unsettling melody. "You have to listen, we're trapped here. You're one of us now." The irony twisted in my mind, the realization that I wasn't about to save them. Rather, I was on the precipice of losing everything. Just as the darkness began to swallow me whole, an unexpected warmth radiated from the metallic object in my hand. The wrench, me only solace against this chaos. Valiantly, I swung the tool into the abyss, hoping to sever the malignant grip. The sound was sickeningly dull, resounding thud against something tough yet intangible. The reaction was instantaneous. A shriek erupted from the shadows, and a sudden push of air sent me tumbling backward. I hit the ground hard, every breath driven from my lungs as I fought against the tide of shadow that threatened to engulf me. "Not yet," a low, guttural whisper clawed at the recesses of my mind. It was the figure, now stepping closer to the threshold where light flickered relentlessly, trying to pierce the black veil before me. Its form rippled, each step carrying the weight of countless lost souls with it. Not until you confront your fears, I couldn't gather my thoughts. My heart raced as I trained my eyes forward, every nerve ending screaming to escape, yet transfixed by a horrifying curiosity. What lay beyond the threshold of that unknown, malevolent darkness? In that moment, I noticed something glittering within the void. A glimmer of movement flashed before me, insatiably curious fingers weaving through the fabric of shadows. Images flashed in my mind like fragmented memories. Moments of pain and loneliness, suffocating insecurities, failures that clawed at my very existence. Was this what they were offering me? A reflection of my innermost fears, tugging at the frayed edges of sanity? Join us. The voices chanted, swirling closer again, becoming a maelstrom of desperation. Let go of the past. Return home. Bile rose in my throat as horror twisted inside me. I clamped my eyes shut, not wanting to join their wretched collective or worse, lose myself in the dark. But my resolve began unraveling. I had gone too deep. The shadows whispered, and their chorus promised absolution, an end to the pain that I had carried far too long. And then came a crash, a sound so visceral, it ignited the air around me. A widely grinning figure emerged from the darkness, skin pale and glistening like raw flesh under moonlight, eyes glowing with unnatural hunger. Its mouth opened wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth, each one sharper than the last. I see you. It hissed, its voice dripping with malice, every part of it imbued with a twisted glee. You have so much potential, my dear, so many regrets yet to be fulfilled. Fear coursed through me, trumping my confusion. My heart pounded as everything around me grew darker, the shadows thickening, eager to consume me wholly. Yet I clung to the wrench, my only source of courage, my last defense, determined to face my fears or die trying. I swung blindly at the monster before me, but it melted away from my grasp like mistily to reform behind me, laughter echoing through the void. You cannot escape, dear child. You will learn what it means to be shattered. You will learn what it means to be one of us. And just as I turned to confront the horror, another chilling whisper scraped against the back of my mind, one that was different from all the others, leaving me paralyzed with dread. Look behind you. I hesitated, my heart nearly stopping in my chest, and against all instincts, I turned to peer into the dread-filled shadows. What stared back was my own reflection. But it wasn't me, no, it was everything I had fought against, a grotesque mirror of anguish twisted in torment. And then the reflection smiled, and the darkness echoed with my own voice. Ready to join us? In that moment, reality shattered, and the ground beneath me crumbled, sending me spiraling into a bottomless pit, the echoes of my own laughter mingling with the screams that surrounded me. As I plummeted through the void, time became a nuances of horror, each second stretched into infinity. The air thickened around me, wrapping cold tendrils around my throat, clawing at my sanity. The voices crescendoed, filling my ears with a cacophony of anguish that blurred the line between nightmare and reality. I lost track of my descent, spiraling, tumbling, enveloped in darkness sharper than despair. Each blink brought forth new flickers of light, painful memories, faces of lost friends, my failure-a nightmarish slideshow I couldn't escape. Then in an instant, the darkness trembled, and I found myself on solid ground. I gasped, breathless, a chill anchoring me to the earth as disorientation cascaded through me. Dread wove itself into my very being, wrapping tighter than ever before. Shadows whispered yet again, coaxing me to look around. I was within the remnants of a construction site, skeletal frames jutting into the oppressive night like jagged teeth. Broken glass crunched beneath my feet, and metal beams loomed ominously overhead. The air was dense with an unsettling stillness, a concentration of foreboding that sent shivers crawling across my skin. Felt wrong, dislocated from any reality I had known. Don't you recognize this place? A voice pierced the stillness, wrapped in layers of malice. I whipped around, eyes widening as I faced a figure draped in black, its edges serrated like the tear of fabric caught in a storm. This is where they left you, it whispered, twisting the knife of memory deep into my heart. Images burst forth, fragments of construction workers laughing, their bright orange vests contrasting sharply with the encroaching shadows. They were men who had worked tirelessly through the nights, crafting the skeletal frame of an ominous building, their lives cut short by an unspeakable accident. A rotting stench wafted through the air, bringing with it the metallic tang of blood, and it became clear. Something sinister had unfolded here. I turned away, shaking my head furiously. No, I don't remember. But the shadows responded, swelling with glee, revealing flashes of twisted faces in the periphery, witnesses to something I could hardly comprehend. Stay with us. It's where you belong. The voice was lilting yet rasped, winding around my soul. We need you. I stumbled backwards, eyes darting wildly as I took in the haunting caricatures of despair that haunted every corner of this place. The walls began to bleed darkness, and from that darkness emerged more silhouettes, visages of those lost souls. Mouths agape in agonizing silent screams. Help us, they begged, reaching out with gnarled fingers. Help us find peace. The aura thickened, a weight even more stifling than before, as the howls of ancient sorrow echoed like rusty machinery grinding in the dark. Fear surged anew, overpowering all rational thought. I had been dragged into a realm where regret was tangible, festering like an untreated wound. As I turned to flee, I was met by a wall of shadowy figures, their faces swirling through the murkerific masks of the past, mouths twisted in silent screams. They clawed towards me, desperate for release, for anything to remind them of their humanity. The darkness roiled around me, thickening and pulsating, inexorably drawing me closer. Join them. Came the whisper again, so sweet, so beckoning. You have so much to offer, so much left to fulfill. No. My voice cracked against the oppressive air, but the shadows tightened their grip, lapping at my feet like hungry beasts. Remember the lives you took, they hissed, the air buzzing with a sinister energy that tangled with my thoughts. And suddenly the ground trembled beneath me, and I stumbled again as memory rushed in, a recollection of that very night, the accident, the chaos that had made these poor souls part of my existence. I gasped in horror as realization struck. Memories long buried clawed back to the surface, sharp and suffocating. The workers' fellow travelers had been crushed, lost in the very constructs I helped design, crushed under the weight of ambition. They were calling for vengeance. Fool! Shrieked the figure before me, eyes blazing with a fiery intensity. You cannot rid yourself of the past. It will haunt you forever, and now you must choose. I was trapped, divided between accountability and cowardice. Behind me, the anguished cries escalated, the air thick with desperation. I could barely breathe, heart racing as I looked back at the tortured faces. What do you want from me? I gasped. Join us, or suffer for eternity. Only your sacrifice can free us. The ground shuddered violently, and the shadows surged forward, an inexorable tide that threatened to pull me under. I staggered, clutching my wrench in a feeble attempt at defense, when from the depths of the darkness, an ear-splitting crack reverberated, followed by the chilling sound of 1,000 whispers echoing my name, an ominous promise that soon, I too would belong to the nightmares lurking within this lifeless grave of a construction site. What have I done? The weight of sin bore down on me, and the ground began to give way once more. Then, just as I was about to be swallowed by the dark, a figure stepped out before me, a silhouette clad in white overalls, face obscured yet radiant in the darkness. Not yet. You can't escape without facing what lies within, it said, voice calm yet chilling. I muttered a silent prayer, hope dwindling as I stared into the void where both salvation and damnation awaited. My heart sank as I realized I was not alone, nor was I free. And then it lunged. The figure surged towards me, a blur of white that contrasted starkly with the swirling shadows seeking to envelop me. But as it got closer, the outline morphed, and dread coiled tightly in my chest. I recognized that uniform. It was the very attire worn by the workers who had perished beneath the crushing weight of steel and concrete, their vibrant dreams now shackled to this desolate place. Help us! It whispered again, voice devoid of human warmth, sibilant and eerie. You can't turn away this time. You owe it to us. I stumbled backward, visions flashing tormented faces, the clang of metal on metal, cries for help growing dim, then drowning in the toll of death. The shadows inched closer with insatiable hunger as I struggled against the suffocating grip of despair. Why do you torment me? I shouted, but the words felt futile, absorbed by the thick shadows that leered, teasing me with the memories I wished to forget. I didn't make the choices that led to your demise. choice, the figure hissed, its voice now a chilling echo of the very men I had let down. You think you were just a spectator? You designed this fate. You drew the blueprints of our demise. They reached out, fingers stretching like tendrils, melding into the swirling darkness. It was as if the shadows twisted around their beckoning hands, merging into one grotesque entity of regret. I felt their desperation seep into my mind, churning like acid I didn't know. I screamed, pain twisting my insides. With each minute detail they pressed into my consciousness, the weight of my ignorance became unbearable. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of despairing souls, each crying out for justice, for release, for punishment. Then, from the chaos, a single vision erupted, an image of steel beams crashing down, a vivid replay of horror I had blocked from my mind. I was there, helpless. My design had taken life and become a monster. I clasped my head. Stop. I won't. You can't escape your share of this darkness. The figure lunged closer, fingers curling around my wrist like iron chains. A rush of frigid air enveloped us as the shadows recoiled, drawn by the figure's rage. You must face what you've done, or remain forever lost. The ground trembled beneath us, the once solid foundation morphing. Cracks opened like jagged mouths, blackened and yawning, whispering dark promises of what awaited within. Shadows writhed, clawing at the edges of the fissures, pulling me closer to the abyss. I could feel the dead workers' despair clawing at my own heart, turning my lungs to ice, making me question the very essence of my being. That I glanced back, and the tormented souls were aglow with a crescent moon's sheen, desperate eyes filled with a pain deep enough to drown me. They drew nearer, insistent and pleading, trapped between worlds, a reminder of my failures, a promise of my future. Help us find peace. Trade your sanity for our freedom. Oh, I cried, but doubt washed over me in waves. What if they were right? What if my very essence was the key they needed to escape their torment? In desperation, I wrenched free from the figure's grasp, and in that moment of chaotic turmoil, my instincts took hold. I ran towards the edge of the site, my heart pounding like an executioner's drum. Maybe I could slip away, leave behind the burden of their lost dreams. Yet the shadows enveloped any escape, whispering my name, 1,000 voices weaving through the night in muted symphony as I stumbled. The world quaked, a tremor so violent it sent me crashing to the ground. The fissures widened, black tendrils stretching and reaching, clawing at the remnants of who I once was. Despair seeped from the core of this place, and with it came a shriek, a tortured cry of those wronged me, own voice mingling with theirs. That I gripped the earth, losing my grasp on reality, every fiber of my being demanding I confront the shadows. Yet, beneath the clamoring chaos, a soft light flickered from the depths of the fissures. It pulsated, seething with mystery but also hope. Take us home, the figure urged, voice sweet decay. Your sacrifice will bind us, and release you. With every ounce of strength, I pulled myself towards the light, the darkness surging all around me, hungry to swallow me whole. The luminous essence throbbed, inviting yet terrifying, a fragile beacon ticking toward an end not truly known. My heart pounded as I reached out, fingers brushing against the edge of illumination. And just when it felt like salvation was within my grasp, the shadows screamed louder, a deafening roar that sent me spiraling back into the void. You cannot escape, echoed in every corner of my mind as the ground began to split apart, swallowing me into the abyss below. And then everything went silent, except for a whisper so soft it pierced like ice through flesh. Join us. Forever. In that moment of weightless suspension, I realized I was too far gone. The darkness had already claimed a part of me, and what awaited below would change everything. But before I could process the impending consequence, I fell. I fell into the echoes of the very souls I had forsaken, drawn down into their eternal night where my own heart would bleed along with theirs. Blackness enveloped me, and then I heard laughter. Their laughter. The clutches of the black pit released me with a sickening lurch, and I found myself sprawled on the damp earth, illuminated only by a faint, flickering glow. Littered around me were remnants from the past, old helmets, rusty tools, and tattered orange vests, testimony to the lives that had been lost here. A sense of disorientation washed over me. It felt as if I had broken through an unseen barrier between dimensions, a threshold that demanded I pay for what I had failed to acknowledge. The ethereal light pulsated warmly nearby, swirling like a forgotten star as tendrils of darkness receded, hissing in despair. I scrambled to my feet, senses heightened, though the air felt thick and sticky, altering every breath. The shadows that lingered still murmured in the back of my mind, their whispers echoing misgivings as I took hesitant steps toward the spectral glow. As I approached, the light shifted, revealing the forms of the lost workers' ethereal projections dancing just beyond my reach, trapped yet somehow anchored to this twisted, temporal limbo. Their faces blurred together, each one a ghostly reminder of choices made long ago, a wall of grief hardening into a breathless panic that tightened around my throat. "Don't look at them." The voice was a low growl, resonating from somewhere too deep within me, leading me to instinctively avert my gaze. It was then I realized I was not alone. Emerging alongside the spectral parade were figures cloaked in darkness, entities that crawled like shadows slithering just out of sight, yet so close I could taste their malice. "Join us," they hissed, seductive and sweet, tempting me with the promise of oblivion. The only escape lies in the embrace of shadows. That I blinked, desperately trying to process this tormented reality. The light, its source, seemed to pulsate with an urgency, beckoning me closer. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice trembling as I felt the piercing gaze of those lost souls. "Your spirit cannot be pacified until you give it all," said one spectral figure, eye sockets hollow but filled with ancient sorrow. "You must connect your suffering with ours." A wave of nausea washed over me. "I komt I vondt," I cried, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread mixing with the heavy weight of my guilt. Deep down, my heart clenched painfully, knowing I had come too close to accepting the dead as my fellow travelers into despair. "Unforgiven," shrieked the shadowy figures, their voices a dissonant melody that combined into a shriller wail. And in that instant, the luminous glow shifted, revealing a sunken pit beneath them. It widened, showing faces at its edge, mouths gasping for breath yet swallowed whole by despair. Every tragic event flashed before me once more, a cacophony of metal clashing and pleas for help rising from the grave. "You can save us," the bright figure urged softly, head tilting with painful grace. "At the cost of your memories, your sanity, no." I gasped, my heart beating faster as I recognized the implications. "I won't sacrifice who I am." A frigid wind whipped through the sight, causing the shadows to ripple like dark water. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted, saturated with a malevolent intent that seemed to seep into the very soil. The earth trembled once more, a loud roar echoing through the dark that sounded like the wails of the damned. "Then feel our anguish," the faceless shadows shrieked, and in unison, they lunged forward, claws poised to damage not just my body but the very essence of my soul. My breaths were quick and panicked as I darted back, stumbling over the debris scattered behind me. I turned, glancing back at the PETA swirling mass where spectral hands reached out, twisting and turning in desperation. They beckoned amidst a chorus so haunting it threatened to swallow me whole. Just as I was about to make my escape, I noticed something beneath the murky earth. An item glinted tantalizingly, a pendant, half buried as if waiting for my touch. Heart racing, I reached for it, and the moment my fingers grazed its cool surface, a hot pulse shot through me, a connection igniting with the spirits around. Their cries crescendoed, a dissonant chorus of hope mixed with despair, wrapping itself around my heart. "I will set you free," I shouted, the weight of their agony bursting forth like a dam, forcing me to confront not just my own darkness but theirs too. I ripped the pendant from the earth, feeling the shadows close in, prepared to drag me into their night. But the glow intensified, illuminating a horrific truth woven into its heart, as a chilling realization clawed its way into my mind. What I intended to use for freedom could just as easily become the shackles binding my fate to theirs, the very bridge to a far more sinister deal than I could have ever fathomed. Clutching the pendant to my heart, I turned back to face the looming shadows, suddenly understanding the cost for my interference was far greater than I could have ever prepared for. The choice was no longer in my hands. As the shadows lunged and the abyss beckoned, drowning me in a vibrant chaos of what was once my reality. In the last moment before darkness claimed me. Their voices screamed with both terror and glee. Welcome home forever. The air around me crackled with energy as I fell deeper into the embrace of shadow. But just as the darkness pulled at the fringes of my consciousness, the pendant flared vibrantly in response. It felt alive, pulsating with an energy that shattered the grip of despair momentarily, illuminating the void engulfing me. I found myself no longer falling, but suspended in a surreal limbo between light and unholy dark. The wails of the shadows transformed into a rolling thunder, echoing with tormented whispers of unresolved regrets and midnight fierce lament from souls that had seen too much and were desperate to share their burden. Horrified images flickered across my mind. Faces contorted in agony, their shadows stretching long and twisted before they were ripped away into oblivion as I floated. The pendant warmed against my chest, grounding me amidst the chaos. For the first time, I saw not only the anguished spirits reaching out with desperate hands, but also those shadows looming behind them. Glimpses of their twisted forms, crowned with eyes of malice and mouths stitched shut, hovered at the edges, watchers waiting to snatch away the last flickers of hope. Don't you dare let them take you, I shouted into the void, voice trembling yet defiant. I thought of the lives lost here, the ones entwined with my own deep-seated connection born from a shared struggle. Instinctively, I held the pendant tighter, channeling the energy within to project my unwillingness to succumb. The figures around me began to swirl, a cyclone of translucent bodies igniting with a violet hue that spiraled toward the pendant. Unseen hands reached, as if the very essence of the spirits was drawn forth, merging with my own heartbeat, pumping desperation through my veins. Fear gripped me. Would I become one of them? Would their pain weave into my spirit, offering me no escape? Suddenly, a violent tremor shattered the eerie stillness, quaking the very ground beneath me. Distorted faces splintered across the darkness as the shadows hissed in rage, recognizing that I held the power to interfere with their dominion. You think you can break the cycle? One whispered, its voice slithering like smoke through my mind. You are already tethered to us. Your heart wears their chains. Before I could respond, the apparition advanced, a grotesque parodical form of a man whose limbs twisted unnaturally, eyes sunken and glistening with an otherworldly hunger. Embrace us and free yourself from this agony. We could be so much more together. It shrieked, its voice oozing poisonous seduction. Oh, I screamed, feeling the pendant's heat turn searing, as if it were at war with the darkness surrounding me. You will not take me with you. Panic surged again, realizing that this pendant was a conduit, a tether to them as much as it was my weapon against their grasp. The lights flickered in and out, the ethereal glow clashing with the menacing shadows in a kaleidoscope of chaos. With every beat of my heart, I cast memories into the dark childhood spent with innocent laughter, fleeting moments held dear, tragically beautiful encounters. My soul, once filled with doubts, now thrummed with the potency of those memories. The pendant responded, its glow intensifying. But before I could regain control, a wailing surged from the depths below. The abyss erupted as spirits erupted from the ground like geysers of sorrow, limbs thrashing as they fell back into this world, desperate for release. The cacophony enveloped me, and I felt their anguish seep into my very core. Their cries pierced my consciousness, filling me with dizzying despair. I clutched the pendant tighter, the meek light of hope illuminating the chaos, and shouted, "I'll save you." The power surged again, but this time the shadows countered, uglier and more formidable. Tendrils of darkness lashed out, clawing at the pendant, trying to snuff the light that began to pierce their realm. Suddenly, the world turned upside down, and I was yanked from the limbo of light and dark, landing hard on damp ground. Gasping, I found myself back at the edge of the construction site. The air was thick with a cloying mist, glistening with a rancid sheen that twisted the very light around me. The pendant clattered from my hand, rolling out of reach, glimmering ominously as it faded from my sight. But the echoes of despair still thrummed through my body. Each heartbeat resonated with the haunting wails from the shadows and the faint images of the souls expressing a tragic ballet around me. And within that haze emerged one solitary shadow, a figure pulling itself from the pit, its amorphous shape coalescing into something disturbingly familiar. As it lumbered toward me, echoes of countless nameless workers fused with its form, weaving into the fabric of their collective agony. The darkness surged, and suddenly, one of the spectral faces emerged, locking eyes with me, a child, wide-eyed with sorrow and fear, reaching out with a trembling hand. It wasn't just a ghost. It was a plea-broken spirit tethered to the wreckage of our fate. "Help us," it whispered, a plea that reverberated with both innocence and a dreadful weight that I backed away instinctively, feeling the dread seep into my very bones. "How? You are beyond saving, trapped in this hell," I yelled in despair, yet the air crackled with desperation all around. But as the shadow advanced, an unsettling realization struck me: the child wasn't seeking salvation but my very soul to strengthen their grip on the mortal realm. And just as the shadows began to encircle, tightening their grasp, the pendant flickered, its power calling to me. In this maelstrom of fear, I had to decide. Would I reach for the pendant again, risking everything to confront this darkness, or would I let go of the light and embrace the eternal night? The haunting chorus rose once more, blurring the line between choice and compulsion. And as the figure loomed closer, mouth agape in an unearthly wail, the ground beneath me began to quake again, threatening to tear open the very fabric of reality itself. I was left with one impossible choice, before I could even comprehend the consequences of my decision. The piercing howl reached a fever pitch, and the world around me shattered into a storm of shadow and light, sealing my fate amid a kaleidoscope of horror. The tempest of shadows and light erupted into a maelstrom, twisting the very atmosphere around me. I was no longer aware of where I stood. The ground wavered, a morass of treachery pulling me towards the abyss that birthed the shadows. My heart thundered, each pulse a drumbeat of fear that echoed within the hollow chamber of my chest. It felt as if the darkness was a living entity, tearing at the seams of reality, craving to consume me whole. The child's face, etched with sorrow, remained constant in my mind, but it twisted into a mask of desperation, calling out to me in agonizing tones that clawed at my sanity. Their hand, small yet powerful, gripped the air around us, weaving an unseen rope of dread that yanked unbroken strains from the depths of my memories. I peered into those sorrowful eyes, a reflection of every regret I ever buried, every ghost I had left haunting the twilight of my consciousness. They were all there, yearning for completion. "Help us," the voice echoed, shattering the silence like a thunderclap. Every murmur and plea mingled into a symphony of despair that filled the space around me, drowning out the rational thoughts trying to possess me. The air thickened, suffocating me in an invisible cocoon of guilt. "You must let us in, only then will you be free." And it dawned on me the pendant was no mere talisman of defense. It was a key, a purveyor of ancient knowledge, binding me to these tortured souls with chains of compassion and regret. I realized, too late, the price of this connection. My own essence laced within theirs, forever entangled in their miseries and anguishes. As the ground convulsed beneath me, I became aware of other shadows slithering in, wretched figures distorted beyond recognizability, workers, the damned, their forms merging into grotesque contortions of flesh and spirit. They brought with them the sorrow of myriad lives unspent, amalgamating into an ever-growing mass of desperation that pressed against me. I shouted against the clamor, my legs unwilling to back away any further. My instincts were screaming at me to flee, yet my heart wavered, gripped by a profound empathy for those lost souls. "You twisted beings have no hold over me." Yet they continued their advance, and with it came the sharp chill, and with that chill came memory. I saw them all, their faces, their lives. They returned to me, a theater of horrors replaying for my hellish amusement. The construction site's history unveiled itself. Buildings that never stood, dreams turned to ash. Each life long buried beneath concrete rubble clenched my heart in relentless fingers of despair. Then, amidst the turmoil, a glint-me pendant, the only source of light and hope, now lying just out of reach. In a moment of clarity beneath this encroaching dread, I understood what I needed to do. It was not about rejecting them, but about embracing the truth of their cries, allying with their pain to resist the grasp of the shadows surrounding me. Gathering my courage, I took a staggering step toward the pendant. Each footfall echoed with the sirens of spirits entwining my essence deeper into their lore. Their shadows writhed, recoiling as if the mere action had siphoned power from their malevolence, feeding off hope, as all darkness does. But the glow of the pendant dwindled further, hazed by the approaching shadows. Their shrieks grew louder, a symphony of agony that conspired to drown my resolve. I thrust my hand toward the pendant just as the figure of the child lunged forward, eyes now narrowed, its mouth open wide in an infernal scream. Time slowed, dread poisoning every moment, with the very essence of my being tethering me to both the living and the dead. I grasped the pendant and, with sheer desperation, invoked every memory, every soul I had ever encountered. "Step back, friends, step back," I shouted, feeling a violent surge of energy igniting within me. Every wail crescendoed into a blaring alarm, howling shadows tangled with pure light, fighting within me for dominion over the essence of existence itself. The darkness recoiled, rents punctuating the sea of shadows, as I felt the light surge through my veins. Just as the tendrils of shadow seemed to pull me into the snare of oblivion, I raised the pendant high, a beacon against the ghastly tide. But then, an ear-splitting howl erupted from the depths below, forcing the ground to shake violently beneath my feet. The earth split, a chasm opening wide, the screams amplified as if the depths themselves were releasing their own midnight wails. I was teetering on the brink, caught between the rising light and the unfathomable abyss, the balance precarious. And as the skies opened above, lightning splitting the air and casting shadows longer than life, the pendant radiated blinding luminescentia, fleeting salvation. Yet a heavy weight settled in my stomach as I felt the very roots of these spirits intertwine with mine, dragging me closer toward the sorrows of oblivion. "Help us," they cried anew, their desperation coiling into a consuming roil of despair. Before I could respond, a shadow distinct and malevolent launched toward me, foreboding and insatiable. An icy grasp closed around my wrist, and within that moment, the world around me yielded one singular truth. Salvation was a bitter poison. Freedom came at a cost I had yet to fathom, and as a final surge of horror washed over me, the ground beneath my feet crumbled, and I felt myself falling not into darkness, but into an unimaginable revelation that accompanied the weight of their collective souls. My scream escaped in a choked breath, swallowed by the void that threatened to consume us all. The shadows closed in, and I was left hanging in that stomach-sinking moment of choice. Would I sink into the depths with the spirits clawing at my being, or find a way to rise against the tide of horror, knowing the truth could destroy me entirely? And then, utterly shattered, the earth fell away, and I plummeted down into unrelenting chaos. The wind howled like a banshee as I descended into the gaping maw of the abyss, the darkness swallowing me with a voracious appetite. I was propelled through a realm where time and space fused into a warped nightmare, visions colliding violently against one another as I tumbled deeper into the unknown. A cacophony of voices clawed at my consciousness, each pained whisper palpable, each cry a blade tearing at the veil of my sanity. "Join us," they sighed, like a chorus of fading echoes attempting to wrap around my mind. "Feel our suffering." I fought back against their allure, my heart racing with terror, but the pull of the past was magnetic, intoxicating. The shadows blindly lunged for me, forming spectral tendrils that grazed my skin like icy breaths of regret. I clutched the pendant, its light flickering dimly as I spiraled, each pulse a signal of the life it contained. Those unfortunate souls entwined with my fate had known fear far greater than any I had ever endured. Suddenly, I slammed into something solid, earth, or perhaps stone, and lay sprawled across the floor of what appeared to be a cavern illuminated by a ghostly phosphorescence, like the soft glow of decaying remains. My head spun as I struggled to sit up, the darkness engendering a suffocating sense of entrapment. Shadows writhed along the edges of my vision, taunting me with tangible, malevolent fingers brushing against the fabric of my reality. In the dimness, not far from where I lay, I caught sight of the child, their form wreathed in shadow, yet their eyes shining with intense sorrow. "You must remember," they commanded, their tiny voice trembling through the air, permeated with urgency. "You must confront what was done." As dread wrapped around me like a shroud, memories flooded back, disjointed yet clear. I saw faces of the fallen, echoes of the lives I had unknowingly torn apart when I had wandered into that cursed construction site. Workers who had misplaced their faith in the towering structures that absorbed dreams instead of granting them. Now, their souls were forever entangled in sorrow beneath the landscape of ambition. "What do you want from me?" I gasped, desperation clawing at my throat. Their gazes bore into me, mere specters of innocence turned harbingers of my guilt. "Rebirth," the child whispered, the anguish in their tone making my heart lurch. "Only by facing the truth can you find peace." A tremor rippled through the cavern, and the shadows convulsed violently, as if responding to a grim command. The air thickened, and from within the darkness, a figure emerged, a towering apparition cloaked in swirling shadows, its form shifting like smoke and ash. It moved with a chilling grace, a dissonant elegance that made a shiver claw its way down my spine. My breath hitched. This was the essence of despair, epitomized, a sentient force formed from the very rancor of those wronged. "Why do you cling to the light?" it growled, its voice a horrifying amalgamation of lost souls. "It is their memories that sustain me, feeding the fire of their wrath. You cannot escape. You will suffer for the dreams you stole, for the lives you abandoned." I pressed the pendant against my chest, its warmth now a stifled heat, flickering as if struggling for breath. But the shadows pressed in, driven by a hunger rooted deeply in my own unveiled fears. The walls of the cavern began to slide inward, constricting, pulsing around me like the heartbeat of a monstrous living entity. I felt myself drawn against the force of the despair emanating from the entity. Relentless tide that churned within it enveloped me more tightly than the chains of my conscience. "Face us," the entity roared, flames igniting in its hollow eyes as it extended its otherworldly limbs. Shadows flared into vicious faces contorted in agony, their mouths stretching wide in tormenting howls that echoed through the abyss. I fell back, the energy surging within me battling against the invasive darkness. But as more faces emerged, I felt my resolve weakening. With a scream, I hurled the pendant toward the entity, as if allowing all of my fears and regrets to escape into it. "You can't have me. You won't take me." The cavern erupted with an ear-piercing screech, the visage of the dark figure flickering in and out of existence in waves of anguish as they shielded themselves against the glimmering light. For a fleeting moment, hope surged through me, buoyed by the wretched spirits I had connected with, a bond forged not from pain alone, but from shared histories and dreams unfulfilled. Yet, just as the forces of light flickered, the shadows surged forward in a cacophony of madness, shrouding me once more. I felt the fragile thread between light and dark snapping, reality warping as the cavern began to dissolve into rippling chaos. As I braced myself, I recognized the faces of the once damned circling around me, their mournful eyes now reflecting something far more devastating: betrayal. And in the bizarre horror of that moment, the cavern began to split, the fissures gaping like a maw hungry to consume, not just the vestiges of my spirit, but the illuminated shards of me that had yet to succumb. "Face what you have done," the child shouted through the storm of shadows, their voice straining against the overwhelming chorus of anguish. As light and darkness warred with each other and the ground began to shatter like glass beneath me, I realized the ultimate fight awaited: a descent into an abyss filled with my own buried regrets, a confrontation with the very soul of what I had betrayed. But before I could affirm my last thoughts, the earth trembled violently, and the shadows crescendoed into an unbearable scream. The walls closed in, shadows blanketed me, and as the weight of despair pressed down, I was jerked forward, plunging into a void that left no trace of existence except for the whispers of the damned, promising that I would be made to remember. The darkness enveloped me entirely, a cocoon that constricted my breath and my thoughts. For what felt like eternity, I drifted through an endless void, suspended in time, drowning within an ocean of misery. I could hear the echoes of lost souls, each lament woven into my psyche a reminder of my burden, the haunting specter of those I had failed. Yet, even within this haze, I felt a flicker of resistance, a spark of defiance igniting a fire deep in my chest. And then, with a sudden jolt, I was expelled from that suffocating blackness, crashing onto cold, damp ground, every fiber of my being screaming in agony. I gasped, realizing I was back at the construction site and oh not again. I moaned, looking around in frantic disbelief. Everything felt achingly familiar yet suffused with an unbearable weight. The specters should have been gone. But there they were, rising from the shadows, their faces frozen in a silent scream. The phantoms of the workers emerged once more, their hollow eyes piercing through my soul. This time the agony was tangible, and so was their rage. "You tricked us," one shouted, their voice a chorus born from pain and betrayal. "You've returned to pay for our sins. What do you want from me?" I cried, frantically casting my gaze around, desperate for some form of escape, but the shadows closed in tighter. "I'm not your jailer." I stumbled back against a wall, every echo whispering promises of punishment, drowning out my pleas. The memories surged again, an avalanche of regret crashing down upon me, rendering me helpless, and for a brief moment, I felt the pull of darkness clawing at the edges of my mind, urging me to submit. As dread coiled around my throat, I saw a glowing pendant that had slipped from my grasp, now pulsating like a beacon of hope. "Take it, please," a shadow cried, their form morphing into the child's once more, tears cascading down an incorporeal face twisted by suffering. "With that, you can set us free." Frozen, my heart surged with conflict. Did I dare wield that power, knowing how it twisted my very essence? Guilt chained me, whispering that I had already forsaken too many lives to let them down again. But if the pendant held the power to release their anguished souls, perhaps it could also redeem mine, tear back the layers of despair I had unwittingly woven. With all my strength, I lunged for the pendant. The moment my fingers brushed against its cold surface, it flared to life, and warmth surged through me, igniting purpose in the depths of my heart. I could feel the lives of those I had neglected wrapping around me, desperate for release. Together, I shouted, channeling every ounce of my resolve into the pendant, letting the energy course through me. "They'll do this for you. For all of us." Light erupted from the pendant, cascading into a brilliant aurora that shone down upon the tortured spirits, casting their shadows away like mist before the sun. A deafening roar echoed as the shadows recoiled, reluctantly releasing their grip, and with that, I felt something shift deep within, an uncoiling of the agony that had held me prisoner for far too long. But as I pulled the energy together, something shifted again. A chilling realization overshadowed my victory. The pulse of darkness grew frantic, and I could hear them. The voices I thought I had escaped swelled to a deafening crescendo in my mind. "You think you can save them? They are lies. The truth is far worse than you know." "No," I screamed against the cacophony, forcing light forward, pushing back against the tide of darkness. Then I saw it clearest: my role was never to save them. It was to face my demons, reshaping the darkness within. In excruciating clarity, I felt the threads of my own unraveling memories surge into focus. The bright-eyed workers, their laughter now haunting me, betrayal indelibly marked on my soul. It was not the horrific accident that doomed them. It was my indifference, my reckless pursuit of ambition. "Face your flaws," the darkest visage crowed, grim truths wrapping around my throat like a noose. "You carry the burden. You let it happen." The pendant vibrated against my chest, its warmth now pulsing with the potential of my confrontation. I understood they needed me to own my guilt, confront the ghosts I had cast aside, not with courage but with fragile humanity that intertwined our fates. Tears streamed down my face as I let the memories wash over me, temporary yet infinite. I surrendered to every regret and fear, forcing out the scream of regret that had churned within me for so long. "I see you. You were not a loss to me but a reminder of who I must become. I will bear this weight together. We will not fade." The pendant flared bright, its light igniting a luminescent circle, embedding the shadows of despair that had haunted me. Taking strength from the past, I commanded the darkness to show itself to let me bear the blame, to let me own the responsibility and release the souls forever bonded to this nightmarish reality. Their faces illuminated, flickering in recognition, a mosaic of the lost workers, a swell of unity born of sorrow and understanding melded with brilliant light, erupting behind the veil of darkness. It surged out, breaking through the echoes of despair. The shadows howled in rage, their forms dissipating, losing solidity as I embraced the truth of my faults. We are together, I cried, the light swelling as humanity thrummed within the pendulum of our collective existence, shattering the gloom and flooding the chasms of shadow. Then, from the depths of that confrontation, I felt a last tug of darkness ripping away its hold. I was casting them out, not discarded but set free from the chains of my making. The memory of those lost lives became entwined with the light, their agonizing cries transforming into whispers of gratitude that lingered, remnants of pain intermingled with promise. But there was a final twist to this liberation, a truth that lingered even as the light broke through, boundless yet bittersweet. I was not rid of this horror. They would become part of me, echoes of regret eternally entwined with the breath of my existence. Remember, my child, the phantom child returned, now flickering like a dying flame. We live within you. Hold our memories, never let the darkness consume your light again. And in that ephemeral moment, I understood I was not merely free of their burdens. I was tethered forever to the lesson, forever bearing witness to the importance of every moment, every life lost along the way. As dawn broke over the site, I stood alone, forever changed, with the soft murmurs of those lost souls embedded in my spirit, an unsettling reminder that the darkness would linger, even in light, whispering shadows that would echo every night henceforth, and in that chilling silence, I recalled the truth. Those souls were not truly gone despite my triumph. They were now intertwined with every breath I took, with each nightmare dancing just beyond the reach of my consciousness. Helpless echoed in the depth of my soul, a haunting reminder that what lingers is often more troubling than what has passed. Forever I whispered to the dawn, I will remember you,